here are some action opportunities that I came up with, and I'm sure all of you can come up with even more on your own. For those of us here in the U.S., I was going to urge people to contact their members of Congress to urge passage of the Voting Rights Act, but while I was getting my act together to do this video, the act passed, so yay. And it's now sitting on the President's desk waiting for his signature, and when he spoke at the NAACP meeting last week, he did pledge to sign the legislation. So I think that we should let our members of Congress know that we appreciate that passage and that they did the right thing, and I think we should let President Bush know that we're looking forward to him doing the right thing. As much as I'm critical of the president about a lot of things, I think we do need to let him know when he's done something right. So once he signs it, let him know that you share his view on this and that he did the right thing. One of the things that Americans can do to support people of color in the United States is to urge passage of an increase in the minimum wage. The low-wage workers in the United States are disproportionately people of color, and they are the hardest hit by the fact that there has been no increase in the minimum wage for a long, long time. And this has happened at a time in our country where the incomes of the people at the top of the ladder have been increasing at an unbelievable rate, while the people at the low end of the economic ladder have essentially had stagnant incomes for more than 30 years. Another thing I think that can be done to help people of color in the U.S., specifically African American people for the most part, and that is to urge Congress and the President to make good on the pledges that they made in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. The Gulf Coast and New Orleans area are heavily African American, and there are a lot of people there who have had their lives completely torn apart. And we all saw it, we all watched it on television. But what maybe we're not seeing on television today is that things haven't gotten much better there. There are people who are still waiting for housing, and much of the aid, most of the aid that has been promised to the region by our leaders in Washington has not been delivered. And I think that there are people in Washington who think that we're all going to forget about this. And I think that we owe it to the victims of Hurricane Katrina to make sure that we don't forget. Now, some people may think that Katrina is not a racist issue, and I know that this is a matter of some controversy. I do think that if the majority of the people who were affected by Hurricane Katrina had not been people of color, I think that we would have seen a much faster and much more comprehensive and sustained response. So we need to hold Congress and the President accountable for helping people whose lives were torn apart by the hurricane. Before all of you who are not from the U.S. think that I'm being a typical American and I can't possibly think about things outside of the U.S., I can, honest. So I want to suggest some actions that we can take on a more global scale to eliminate racism or address issues that are related to racism. One thing that we can all do is call for action on the situation that exists in Darfur, Sudan today. There's massive fighting, all kinds of conflict there. People are being murdered, and I think that there would be, again, people might say that this is not an issue of racism because there are people of color killing other people of color. However, I do think that the world response would be different than it is if people who were white people were the ones killing one another. I think that if we consider that the U.S. anyway, intervened in Bosnia, and those were white people who were involved there killing one another, and I don't think that we have the same kind of willingness to intervene in a situation where people of color are killing one another. And genocide is genocide, and we need to step up and say that this needs to stop. I think that we need to support a UN peacekeeping mission in Darfur. Another issue that I think is related to racism, the fact that the world has not intervened more forcefully, is related to racism. And that is the AIDS crisis in Africa. There are millions of people dying in Africa. And worldwide, there are pharmaceutical corporations that have refused to make low-cost AIDS treatments available while there is a huge epidemic going on. And I think we have a moral obligation to help these people and to maybe sacrifice a few profits. These people have made a lot of profit off of people in the developed world who are buying AIDS drugs. They've made plenty of money on it, and it's time now for them to step up and stop the epidemic as much as possible in Africa and bring it under control. So I think we need to pressure the pharmaceutical companies and pressure our governments to pressure the pharmaceutical companies to make this a priority and make these drugs available at a reasonable cost. I also think that we need to pressure our governments to fund and help make happen AIDS programs that are realistic. Programs that, yes, involve the use of condoms. I think we need to quit kidding ourselves that abstinence is the solution.